Resident Evil fans just got some massive news about Requiem. Producer Masato Kumazawa confirmed that characters from the original Raccoon City incident are coming back. But here's the thing. Before everyone loses their minds thinking Leon and Claire are getting full storylines, Kumazawa dropped an important warning that's got the community split right down the middle. So, Kumazawa went on record stating that yes, characters who survived the Raccoon City disaster will appear in Resident Evil Requiem. That's the Raccoon City incident from 1998, the zombie outbreak that basically started everything we know about this franchise. We're talking about the events of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, the nightmare that turned an entire city into a bioweapon testing ground. Now, when you hear Raccoon City survivors, your brain immediately goes to the big names, right? Leon Kennedy, Claire Redfield, Jill Valentine, Ada Wong, Sherry Birkin. These are the characters who made it out alive when Umbrella nuked the whole city to cover up their mess. And honestly, that's exactly what Capcom wants you thinking about right now. But here's where Kumazawa pumped the brakes hard. He specifically said the game is not built around cameos. Those are his exact words, not built around cameos. He's telling us straight up that if you're expecting Leon to show up as a main playable character or Claire to have some massive role in the story, you need to adjust those expectations immediately. The way he described it, these returning characters will appear in a limited capacity. They're there to enrich the story, not carry it. Think about what that actually means. We're probably looking at brief appearances, maybe some cutscenes, maybe some dialogue that connects the dots between past events and what's happening in Requiem. But full playable sections? Major story arcs? Kumazawa's basically saying, don't count on it. And you know what? That's probably the smart move here. Because Resident Evil Requiem isn't trying to be Resident Evil 2 Remake Part 2. The main character is Grace Ashcroft, daughter of Alyssa Ashcroft from Resident Evil Outbreak. That's who this story centers around. Grace is dealing with her own nightmare, her own connection to Umbrella's legacy, and her own survival situation. If Capcom stuffed this game full of Leon and Claire fan service, it would completely overshadow Grace's story. Every cutscene would have fans going, okay, cool, but when does Leon show up again? Instead of focusing on the new narrative they're trying to build, everyone would just be waiting for the next cameo drop. Look at how Resident Evil Village handled this. Chris Redfield showed up, had a significant role, but the game was still Ethan's story. That's the balance Capcom's trying to strike here. They want longtime fans to feel like connection to the franchise's history without letting nostalgia hijack the entire experience. But let's talk about who could actually show up. Leon Kennedy is the obvious candidate everyone's speculating about. He was a rookie cop on his first day when Raccoon City went to hell. By the time of RE4 and RE6, he's this legendary government agent. Having him appear in Requiem, even briefly, would make sense timeline-wise. Maybe he's investigating something connected to Grace's situation. Maybe there's intel about Umbrella remnants that ties back to what he experienced in Raccoon City. Claire Redfield is another strong possibility. She went to Raccoon City looking for her brother Chris and ended up fighting for her life alongside Leon. Claire's always been about exposing Umbrella's crimes and protecting people from bioweapons. If Grace's story involves uncovering some hidden truth about her mother Alyssa or Umbrella's experiments, Claire showing up as someone who's been fighting that fight for years would fit perfectly. Then you've got Jill Valentine, who survived the nightmare with Nemesis hunting her through the streets. Ada Wong, the mysterious spy who's always playing her own game. Sherry Birkin, who was just a kid during the outbreak but carries the G virus in her blood. Any of these characters could logically appear depending on where Requiem's story goes. The key word Kumazawa used was enrich. These appearances are meant to add depth, not steal focus. Maybe it's a phone call with crucial information. Maybe it's a brief encounter where they pass along a weapon or a warning. Maybe it's a flashback that explains how Alyssa Ashcroft fits into the bigger picture of what happened in Raccoon City. Because here's something a lot of people forget. Alyssa Ashcroft was in Resident Evil Outbreak, which took place during the Raccoon City incident. She was a newspaper reporter investigating Umbrella before everything went sideways. If she's her daughter, that means there's a direct bloodline connection to someone who was there, who saw what Umbrella did, who maybe knew things that never got reported before the city was destroyed. That's where characters like Leon or Claire could come in. Maybe they knew Alyssa. Maybe they have information about what she discovered. Maybe Grace is trying to piece together her mother's investigation, and these returning characters hold pieces of that puzzle. Kumazawa's approach here is actually pretty smart from a storytelling perspective. Instead of doing what a lot of franchises do, just throwing in fan-favorite characters for cheap nostalgia points, they're being intentional about it. Every appearance needs to serve the story Grace is living through. And honestly, that's probably protecting the legacy of these characters too. Nobody wants to see Leon show up just to deliver some throwaway lines and disappear. Nobody wants Claire reduced to a glorified cameo that adds nothing meaningful. By keeping their roles limited but purposeful, Capcom can make those moments hit harder when they do happen. Think about it like this. If Leon only appears in 1 or 2 scenes, but those scenes are absolutely crucial to understanding the threat Grace is facing, that's way more impactful than having him pop up every hour just to remind you he exists. Quality over quantity. But I get why some fans are nervous. We've seen games promise returning characters before and then barely deliver anything substantial. There's always that fear that limited capacity is just corporate speak for blink and you'll miss them. Capcom's walking a tightrope here between honoring the franchise's history and telling a fresh story. The fact that Kumazawa felt the need to manage expectations this early tells you they're aware of the hype. They know fans are already making wish lists of who they want to see. By coming out now and saying, hey, temper that excitement a bit, they're trying to avoid the backlash that comes when reality doesn't match the fantasy people built up in their heads. What's interesting is how this fits into Resident Evil's evolution as a franchise. The series is always balanced between bringing back beloved characters and introducing new ones. RE7 went bold with a completely new protagonist in Ethan. RE8 brought back Chris but kept Ethan as the lead. Now Requiem is centering Grace while acknowledging the legacy characters exist in this world. It's a smart way to expand the universe without abandoning what made people fall in love with it in the first place. Grace gets to be her own character with her own story, but she's not existing in a vacuum. The events of Raccoon City still matter. The people who survived still matter. They're just not the main event anymore. So what should you actually expect? Based on Kumazawa's comments, we're probably looking at strategic appearances that serve specific narrative purposes. Maybe an opening scene that establishes the connection between past and present. Maybe a mid-game revelation where a returning character provides crucial context. Maybe an ending that ties Grace's story into the larger Resident Evil mythology. The bottom line is this: Resident Evil Requiem is Grace Ashcroft's game. The returning Raccoon City survivors are there to support that story, not overshadow it. And honestly, that's probably the right call. Let Grace have her moment. Let her story breathe. And when those familiar faces do show up, they'll mean something instead of just being empty fan service. Kumazawa's being upfront about what this game is and isn't. That's refreshing in an industry where marketing often overpromises and underdelivers. He's setting realistic expectations while still giving fans something to look forward to. Whether Capcom can actually pull off that balance remains to be seen, but at least they're being honest about their approach from the start. What do you think about this strategy? Are you cool with limited appearances if they're meaningful, or were you hoping for something bigger? Drop your thoughts below.